Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Donald Trump faces his most serious legal threat yet. The former US president is charged with trying to defraud the country and overturn the 2020 election. Our other headlines: China dispatches thousands of rescue workers as the remnants of Typhoon Doksuri hammer Beijing in the heaviest rainfall in 140 years. And the first European evacuees from Niger arrive home as West African defence chiefs meet to discuss their response to the military coup. New serious criminal charges have been brought against the former United States President Donald Trump, the biggest legal case against him so far as he campaigns to try to return to the White House. Trump is now charged with plotting to overturn the results of the 2020 election following the investigation into the Capitol Hill riots in 2021. The 4 counts within the indictment include conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of official proceedings, and conspiracy against the rights of US citizens. It's the 3rd time this year that Trump has been indicted. The other 2 cases relate to mishandling secret documents found at his Florida home and falsifying business records over payments to a former porn star. Trump is also facing a 4th legal case for alleged election meddling in the state of Georgia. Well, the former president denies all of those charges and claims he's being persecuted by political opponents. And despite the mounting legal trouble, Trump remains the favourite to be the Republican candidate in 2024. The Associated Press reporter Philip Crowther joins us now from Washington, D.C. Philip, just talk us through what happens now, what happens next.
Well, a first court appearance by the former president is expected tomorrow, Thursday, though one of his lawyers has said today that it is the judge who will decide whether Donald Trump will be appearing, quote, either virtually or in person. So there's still that question mark over whether Donald Trump will actually appear here in person or not. Whether this is going to be a speedy trial or not, as the special counsel said yesterday, is also still open to debate, because Donald Trump's legal team won't want this to go quickly. They will want to slow this down as much as they can, as they have already attempted to do in the other cases, the other criminal cases that Donald Trump faces at this point in other parts of the United States. As for the defense, by the way, that Donald Trump will come up with, that his legal team will come up with, well, one of his lawyers saying today that this indictment is criminalizing speech. In other words, what this defense will be, it will be a First Amendment defense. In other words, the president had the freedom of speech to say what he did. The Department of Justice, though, here in Washington, D.C., its response to that would be this, that the words that the former president used when he was still the president, they actually led to a crime, and that crime being the attempt to stop the certification and the counting of the votes in the 2020 presidential election in a building that we can see not far from here at the Capitol. This court case will begin tomorrow, again with still the question mark over whether Donald Trump will appear or not. It will be beginning right between the Capitol building and the White House, the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue here in Washington, D.C.
And we've heard from Trump. Trump has responded to this latest indictment. What has he had to say?
Yeah, he tends to respond on his own social media platform, Truth Social. He says this, he has never had so much support, and then adds to that that this indictment has awoken the world to the corruption scandals and failure that has taken place in the United States over the past 3 years. That's the former president's view of the Biden administration. He's not the only one who has reacted, because his team, the Trump campaign team, his aides have sent out talking points already in advance of this indictment becoming official yesterday, and those viewpoints have been reflected very much in some of the quotes we've been seeing from his closest allies. We have heard, for example, from Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker in the House of Representatives, of course a Republican like Donald Trump. He says that this is an attempt to attack the front runner. That reflects the view that the Trump campaign has and that Donald Trump has had with all of these legal cases surrounding him right now, that they are, first of all, political persecution and that this is election interference. Donald Trump seems to believe, or at least he says, that he believes that these are attempts by the Department of Justice, by the U.S. government, to get in the way of his front-runner status in the run to become the Republican nominee in the presidential election in 2024.
Philip, thank you for that. Philip Crowther, the Associated Press correspondent, talking to us in Washington, D.C. Scott Lucas is a professor of US and international politics at University College Dublin. Scott, good to see you. Welcome back to the programme. For those of us who are not immersed in the American Constitution and the American legal system, can you first explain whether or not President Trump can go to jail and still run for president?
Yes. At least this is a simple answer amidst all the complications of the latest indictments, and that is the U.S. Constitution does not forbid anyone who is indicted from campaigning for president, nor does it forbid anyone who is convicted of a felony from becoming U.S. president. Where we will be on unprecedented ground, we don't know where it will lead, is if Donald Trump in January 2025 has won the election and is becoming president, but is either in prison or is facing prison. Will he be disqualified from office because he would be at risk of being behind bars even when he is the commander-in-chief of the United States?
Political polarization is obviously huge in the United States. Do we have a sense of how voters there in the States will react to this latest indictment?
Well, those people who've been entrenched with Donald Trump for many years, or those people who hang on to his coattails, like the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, will trot out the standard lines today: witch hunt, hoax, Democrat plot, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we've heard that on multiple scandals and legal cases involving Trump. I think it's far more important to say that we should be asking a different question, and that is, this is a legal process, first and foremost, where it is important to test the facts of the indictment, the 45-page indictment, in a full and fair process which may culminate in a trial. In that process, Donald Trump is innocent until proven guilty, but he is not above accountability. He's not immune from being tried. And to bring political considerations into that legal framework, to try to undermine that process and undermine, indeed, the U.S. legal system, that's the risk that we have if we pay too much attention to Trump's latest statement to try to divert, to throw mud on the wall, and frankly, to lie about the issues and the facts that have been presented.
The other cases, just to remind us, relate to the mishandling of secret documents found at his Florida home, falsifying business records over payments to a former porn star, and of course that legal case for alleged election meddling in the state of Georgia. It's said that this is Trump's most serious legal case. How does this compare to those previous indictments?
Well, I mean, they're all serious in the sense that they are felony charges which carry the prospect of prison time. In the case of the false business practices to cover up interference in the 2016 election through the payments to the porn star Stormy Daniels, 34 felony counts. On the theft, called mishandling of documents that were taken from the White House, 40 counts. And each of those counts under the Espionage Act up to 10 years in prison. But what makes this set of indictments, as it is distinctive, is not just the threat to Donald Trump of multiple years in prison, it is the threat that this case highlights. Because even though there are only 4 felony cases here, we are talking, in effect, according to the indictment, of a plan which amounted to an attempted coup. And by that I mean that not only did Trump deny the election results, not only did he knowingly make false statements that there was a fraudulent election, he tried to use that to hold on to power by blocking the transition to the White House of Joe Biden. This is the most serious threat to the U.S. domestic system by one individual, probably since 1865, the U.S. Civil War, which is what makes these indictments and the ones that I think are forthcoming in Georgia, similar case of Trump trying to put in fake electors to get elected president. That's what will make these two different from the previous indictments.
Scott, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming back on the programme. Scott Lucas, Professor of US and International Politics at University College Dublin.
Thank you.
Now, the rest of the day's news, and the ratings agency Fitch has downgraded the United States credit rating from the top level AAA to AA+. This follows concern over the state of the country's finances and its debt burden. Fitch is one of the three major independent agencies that assess creditworthiness. The organisation says it's noted a steady deterioration in the US financial governance over the last 20 years. After 4 days of intense downpours, heavy rain is starting to ease in northern China. At least 20 people have died in Beijing and its surrounding areas in the heaviest rainfall there for 140 years. Our correspondent Ning Hong is in Baoding, one of the worst affected areas. Ning Hong, first of all, what's the situation where you are now?
The flood is traveling downstream after it first formed in the mountainous areas to the west of Beijing. So it is now traveling downstream and along the Yongding River and Haihe River, major river here in northern China. Eventually it will go into the ocean, but before that, the flood will go through several major cities, including Tianjin, Baoding as well. Also very populated areas and major economic zones. So what people are doing now is to guide this flood carefully to avoid, to eventually prevent it from damaging too much to this area. We can see that areas that would store these floods were opened one after another. And yesterday and the day before yesterday, the summit reached Zhuozhou, where a major city in northern China as well, also a populated area. And then today, the water level in Zhuozhou is receding, and then another place along downstream is Guan, is facing the rising levels, rising water as well. And then I am now in Langfang, another city downstream. So we're literally traveling along with the flood as well. On our way from Zhuozhou to where I am traveling on highway, we could see that the large area of farmlands and villages were submerged in water, and also roads and bridges crossing the river were blocked or sealed off, and with police officers there turning people away. And also, we were told by people that the Yongding River used to be just 7 to 8 meters wide in normal days, but now it's like nearly 2 kilometers wide. So you can imagine how many water there are. Also, later this afternoon, 6 o'clock, and the local authority decided to open another new storage area for a larger amount of villages inside this area to store this huge amount of water. This will involve a large area, mostly rural area in Langfang, a city in Hebei province, also some area in Tianjin. So this is what's happening now, and we're in Langfang now, so we're expecting that the summit of the flood to reach this place in the coming days.
Ning Hong, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Our correspondent Ning Hong on the floods in China. You're watching CGTN, still ahead. As the evacuations continue from Niger, can the country's neighbours find a path to stability after the coup?
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Donald Trump faces his most serious legal threat yet. The former United States president is charged with trying to defraud the country and overturn the 2020 election. Our other headlines: China dispatches thousands of rescue workers as the remnants of Typhoon Doksuri hammer Beijing in the heaviest rainfall in 140 years. West African defence ministers are holding talks in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, to discuss the military coup in Niger. The meeting of the ECOWAS regional bloc comes a week after the country's democratically elected president and his government were overthrown. Meanwhile, the first military planes carrying hundreds of European evacuees has landed in Paris and Rome. Niger has also reopened its borders with several neighbouring countries. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, what, if anything, has come out of this meeting so far?
Well, Jamie, that meeting is still going on as we speak. The Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria, who is incidentally the chairman of the group, has actually spoken and, of course, giving reasons for why the meeting was taking place and calling on the defense chiefs of the other countries now to ensure that the mission succeeds. So the meeting is supposed to take place for 2 days. We would eventually get the final decision of that meeting by tomorrow. But don't also forget that after this meeting, the committee now will have to communicate their decision to the chair of the authorities of heads of state. So basically, they'll make a return to the presidents of the various countries of ECOWAS, and then the presidents would sit down, assess the decision before a final decision now will be taken. So we still have some time to go, but that meeting is on. And of course, the defense chiefs of all the countries concerned are represented at the meeting in Abuja. Jamie?
And what more can you tell us about these evacuees, these evacuations?
Well, the evacuations are on, just as you've said. France, of course, is leading that initiative. Of course, just as you reported, the first plane from Niamey now touched down in Paris not quite long ago. We understand that the second plane is about to leave that country. We have about 700 or so, or 7,000 French nationals. And the French government is not only taking French citizens now, they're also evacuating European citizens from other European countries as well. So the evacuation is on. But let me also quickly say this, that ECOWAS has also dispatched the former military leader of Nigeria, General Abdul Salami Abubakar. He's been asked to go and meet with the junta in Niger to try to talk them out of the situation in that country, try to convince them to reinstate the president. So General Abdul Salami is in Niger, in Niamey at the moment, and he'll be talking with the leader of the junta now, try to convince them to lay down their arms now and give up power, reinstate President Bazoum. So ECOWAS is doing all of this just to see if it can achieve results without having to use force. But then he's made it clear that, look, if force becomes a necessity, it would not hesitate to use it.
Deji, keep us posted. Our correspondent Deji Badmus in Lagos. There have been more airstrikes on Ukrainian cities, hitting more grain stores since the end of the Black Sea grain deal. Grain silos and port facilities near Odessa and the Danube Delta have been targeted several times. The latest attacks were on the port of Izmail, close to the Romanian border. Our correspondent Yolo Abdavid reports.
2 cities in Ukraine were hit overnight. The capital, Kyiv, and a port on the Danube River just 3 kilometers from Romania. The target here was a grain storage. It's been damaged by a drone strike. Izmail is a key port in the Danube Delta, from where some Ukrainian grain is taken by barge to the Romanian Black Sea port of Constanta for shipment to other destinations. This was filmed by a Romanian fisherman. Since the collapse of the Black Sea grain deal in mid-July, the Danube connection is a lifeline for Ukrainian grain exporters. There are diplomatic discussions in the United Nations to try and revive the deal.
What we have been told is that they are prepared to return to discussions, and we haven't seen any evidence of that yet. But I suspect that they know if they want to get their fertilizer out to market, they want the continuation of the efforts to find a way to make the payments that they require, that they're going to have to return to this deal.
In public, at least, there are no indications that Russia is warming to that idea. President Putin invited African countries to a meeting in late July, many directly affected by the increase in grain prices because of the war in Ukraine. According to President Putin, he doesn't feel any financial pressure to restart the agreement on exporting Ukrainian grain after Russia's withdrawal. He spoke to journalists at the Russia-Africa summit.
The prices on the world markets rose a bit, meaning our companies will gain more, meaning we'll gain more taxes. And if we gain more taxes, we will share more profit with the poorest countries and will deliver a certain amount of food supply free of charge.
At the end of the Russia-African summit in his hometown of St. Petersburg, 17 African heads of state were invited to watch an exhibition of Russian naval power. This Navy Day parade a reminder to them and neighbouring NATO members that Russia has larger and more dangerous weapons than the Shahed drones it buys from Iran and uses to attack grain and port facilities in southern Ukraine and the Danube Delta. Yolo Abdavid, CGTN.
Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow is ready to return to that Black Sea grain deal as soon as the country's concerns are dealt with. He made his comments during a phone call with his Turkish counterpart, President Erdogan. Let's talk to our correspondent, Isabel Nakira, in Moscow. Isabel, tell us more about this conversation then between the two leaders.
As expected, Russia's stance still stands. President Putin told President Erdogan on phone that he is ready to return to the grain deal only if its demands are met. He said that all the blockades to its food and fertilizers should be removed before Russia returns to the grain deal. You must remember this deal collapsed on July 17th when Russia cited unfairness and selfishness of the Western countries and Ukraine, saying the poorer countries were gaining very little. And that's why the grain deal was actually initiated. President Erdogan, on the other side, justified his demands, but said that this is a peace deal, that called it a bridge of peace, and say that the peace deal should be, Russia should exercise a lot of restraint and patience on this, brokering of the deal, because he said this deal could, avert a possible food crisis. He asked Russia not to escalate, drone attacks or attacks in Odessa, saying that this could possibly avert food crisis in Africa. In the last few days, Russia has escalated attacks on Odessa, with the Ukrainian president saying vital food stores in Odessa were destroyed. But the two leaders agreed that this conversation should be taken further, and there could be a possible face-to-face conversation with President Putin and Erdogan in the coming few weeks. They agreed that this conversation should be taken further, and the grain shipments should possibly be resumed. And we'll be watching to see what happens in the coming few weeks.
Isabel, thank you for that. Our correspondent Isabel Nakira in Moscow. Senegal has blocked access to the social media app TikTok, saying it's a threat to the country's stability. The country's communication minister said TikTok was used by people with bad intentions to spread subversive messages. This all comes after the government blocked access to other internet services and follows the arrest of the opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. His supporters say the charges are aimed at disqualifying him from standing in the next election. A two-day nationwide shutdown is underway in Iran due to soaring temperatures. Government offices, banks and schools are all closed. The country's health ministry has issued a warning for increased cases of heat exhaustion. Many cities have seen temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius, while the southwestern city of Avaz hit 50 degrees on Tuesday. New research suggests artificial intelligence could be as reliable as humans in detecting breast cancer from scans. Scientists in Sweden found that AI screening produced similar results to scans assessed by radiologists. It's hoped the technology could be used to help address a worldwide shortage of specialists. The headlines again. Donald Trump faces his most serious legal threat yet. The former US president is charged with trying to defraud the country and overturn the 2020 election. Our other headlines: China dispatches thousands of rescue workers as the remnants of Typhoon Doksuri hammer Beijing in the heaviest rainfall in 140 years. And the first European evacuees from Niger arrive home as West African defense chiefs meet to discuss their response to the military coup. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Jenny. Well, over to Europe. No big changes of the weather forecast across the majority of the continent over the next couple of days. We're likely to see some widespread precipitation from the west all the way towards into the east, and most of them will be in the form of some light to moderate intensity of rain. Well, in the meantime, here for the majority of Iberia Peninsula, Italy, as well as the Balkans, we'll continue to see some clear conditions in the next few days. And temperature-wise, we're likely to see some cooler temperatures to be developing here for the majority of the western portion of Europe from Thursday into Friday, even though with some cooler temperatures to be arriving. And for portions of Spain and Italy, we'll continue to see some scorching temperatures as we head into this weekend. Take a closer look at the business and travel. And for the major cities up in the north, we'll see quite a lot of rainy spells. For instance, here in Stockholm, we'll see chance of showers on Friday with high temperatures about 21 degrees Celsius. And for other major cities across the western portion of Europe, London and Paris will both see chance of showers with high temperatures in the 20s. And down in Madrid, we'll see some cooler temperatures. Daytime high will be around 30 degrees Celsius on Friday with plenty of sunshine. And here for the major cities across the central portion, Berlin is likely to see some overcast conditions in the afternoon on Friday with high temperatures about 22 degrees Celsius.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.